So in this video, I'm just going to go over some of the basics of using the Lua programming language inside the game, inside of Command. So Lua is a programming language. It's on its own. It's not something that exists only inside of Command. It's its own programming language that Command decided to integrate into their game because it's basically geared towards video game type stuff. It's a fairly simple and easy to work with programming language. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over some super simple basics. I'm going to open up the Lua console here that's under Editor, and then Lua Script Console. Frequently it ends up behind the game. So I'm just going to do some very basic things. So these aren't really going to have anything to do with the game. It's just going to have to do with sort of syntax and usage. So first thing I'm going to say is that I want to have a variable named x, and I'm going to set it to equal to 5. If I go over here and click on run, nothing's going to happen. You see this little checkbox says echo input script on result text. This is the result area up here. If I turn this off and then click run again, nothing happened. So I'm not asking it to do anything. I just told it that x is equal to 5, and on its own it said okay. If I actually want to see that, I have to tell it to print. And I'm going to tell it to print x. So you just say print, and then inside a parenthesis you put what you want to print. Since x is a variable, all I have to do is just type in x. This is going to get more complicated rather quickly. So I'm going to click run, and now you can see it said, oh, x is equal to 5. You told me to print out x, and now I'm going to tell you 5. If I add to this, I can say x is equal to x plus 2. And now if I run this again, it should say x is equal to 5, and then it's going to say x is going to be equal to x plus 2, which 5 plus 2 is going to be 7. Look at that. So now there's something I'm doing here that's not quite right. I really should be prepending these with local so that it sort of starts out as if I declare it as a local variable, it's going to be within the context of what I'm doing right now. It's going to be that value that I expressly give it. If I don't do that, it's going to remember what x was set to throughout the whole game. So in a different, if this Lua bit of code is in an action for an event, and I set it x equal to 5, it's possible that in a separate event, if I use the variable named x, it might already be set to 5 because in a separate one, because in this one, I set it equal to 5. So let's start over. And now I'm going to change to something else. And we're going to say local y is equal to 5. And now we'll do print y. And it should just be 5. Okay, so now let's say, so that's pretty easy. In this context, we're saying that 5 is a number. There's also strings. So it's basically called a data type. Now, you'll have to forgive me if you actually know what you're doing in programming. I don't. I'm just sort of self-taught. I just sort of make it up as I go along, and this is as I understand it. If you're new to programming, this probably is going to be useful. If you actually know what you're doing, I might make some mistakes. So I'm going to say another one. I'm going to say local z is equal to Florida. I'm not sure why. I'm just going to use that as an example. And now if I say print z, you would think it's going to say Florida, but instead it's going to say nil. And that's because a string has to be inside of either a double quote or a single quote. And the Lua console does this cool thing where it's sort of telling you that I only did one quote mark there. So if you do something, you know you're writing a string, you put an opening quote mark, it can either be the single quote or the double quote. It's going to shade it as pink until you close it, and then it changed the color to red. So now that I've changed it to an actual string, if I print z, it should say Florida now. So now since Florida is inside quotes, it's a string. You can't perform math on it. And where I did local y equals 5, that's a number, and you can do math on it. If I put the 5 inside of quotes, and down here, I'll just say y is equal to 5. If I print y, and I'm going to get rid of this part up here, and we'll get rid of the z. And so if I have y is equal to 5 as a string and I print it, it'll say y is equal to 5. If I then do some math and say y is equal to y, and we'll do the multiply, which is asterisk times 3, you'll see that I have the print part in the wrong spot. And it needs to be at the bottom. And now you see that y is equal to 15. Even though up here we told it was a string, Lua is doing an automatic conversion from a string into a number if it can. So if it thinks it makes sense, it will do it. You shouldn't count on that, and you should try to be careful that if something's a string, it should be something you're not going to perform math on. And if it is a number, then you can do math on it. Sometimes when you do stuff with the key value store that's inside the game, it's storing a string and you might want to put numbers in there. You do need to be careful. Even though it is here automatically converting it into a number, I think the problem is if you go to put this back into the key value, which we haven't gone over, and I don't think I'm going to get to, you might have trouble. So you just have to keep in mind that it's important that strings you don't do math on, numbers you do. And let's see, so all of the basic mathematical functions should work, no problem on variables or on numbers. This 3 here, it's just a number. I didn't need to declare that as a variable. You could also divide by 3. I'm not sure what it's going to say the answer is to that. 1.667, yeah, that's right. And you could put any number of things in here that you wanted to do whatever math you want to do. It handles pretty good math because it's a computer, obviously. Okay, so what's next? That's some basics. So you could also do an if statement here. So we're going to go ahead and we'll change this back to a number. Why didn't you like that? Number. And I got the number key lock off. Jeez. Actually, let's do a random number. So the game can handle random numbers, which can come in handy for things like weather or just a variety of things. How many biologics you want to add into an area or something like that. Off the top of my head, I never remember how to do all this, so I am going to go look back out here, and we're going to do random. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is this random seed thing. And let's see, then how do you do it? Math.random and then 2 numbers. So we're going to say we have to do this random seed part. If you don't do that, it'll always pick the same random number. It'll be a random number, but in the same block of code, it'll always pick the same thing. And now we're going to say local, we'll call it R, is equal to math.random. And then you put 2 numbers, we'll say 1, 10. And now if I do print R, it should give me a random number. 8, 1, 4, right on. Just says, for some reason in computers, they don't do a very good job of generating random numbers. 1, 1, 4, 4, 4, and 8. These are not the best random numbers. And then it has, and see how fast I do that? They're all the same. That's because it's using the OS time. And if you don't give it enough time, it's sort of seeding where it's choosing. It's interesting. You can sort of see what it's doing. Oh, there's a 3. That's what I was looking for. So once you have, let's see, let's keep the print R at the bottom. So now that we have a random number, we can do some comparisons. So let's say we want to see if the random number is more than or less than 5. We'll say if R, let's just see if it's equal to 5. So here's something that's going to be a little bit different, is that if you want to see if R is equal to 5, you can't just say equal to 5, or else you're setting R to 5. 1 equal sign means you want to explicitly set a variable to a value. 2 equal sign is a comparison. So if R is equal to 5, then print, we'll go back to our and then we're going to say else, And then we're going to say and then we're going to do the dot dot syntax because we went from a string to a variable inside of a print statement. So let's see if this is going to work. We're randomly seeding the math.random function with the time. We're setting r equal to a random number between 1 and 10. If r is equal to 5, then print r is equal to 5. Else, print r is equal to what it actually is, and then I forgot to end it. You always have to have end at the end of your if statement, and then we'll do a run. R is equal to 10. R is equal to 6. And see right there how there's no space. If I put a space here, there's going to be so there's, even though I have a space right here in between the variable and the end of my string, you need to have the space inside of your string so it shows up. Ah, there we go. We finally got it equal to 5. Okay, so other things to compare is you could do if it's less than 5, if it's equal to or less than 5. That's what I had open over here, relational operators. Equal equal is equality. The little squiggly is inequality, so it's not equal to. Let's try that one. So rather than 2 equals, we'll do a squiggly. If it's not equal to 5, then print r is not equal to 5. So most of the time we should get this. And if we want, we could say it is equal to space and then dot dot r. It is not equal to 5, it is equal to 2. It's equal to 9. R is equal to 5. Okay, so we could just go on and on and on about basic programming. I think that's enough of that. We went over strings and numbers, a little bit about the print statement and how to show a variable next to a string. Let's do some stuff in the game. So here is just some basic stuff going on here. I've got a ship over here. On any unit in the game, if you're in editor mode, you can right click on it, go down to scenario editor, and copy unit ID to the clipboard. A unit ID is made up of the name and the GUID. A GUID stands for Globally Unique Identifier, I believe. It's just a bunch of numbers and letters that is guaranteed to be unique within pretty much, I think, within the global space of everything, but certainly within any one game of command, they're all going to be different. That way, in case you have multiple units with the same name, which on a ship or a plane you probably wouldn't, but down here I have these 3 barracks, a lot of facilities. If they're repetitive, they all have the same name. If I try to get them by just using the name, it's not going to work. On this unit, if I had that name, I could get it. It's always easy in the game if you just have one unit to right click on it, go down here and get the unit ID, which will be both the name and the GUID. So let's go back over here, and now I'm going to type in local u equals, and the function to get a unit is sen edit underscore get unit, and then you put 2 pairs of parentheses. I always do that first, and then I paste in the unit ID, which has these curlies. So almost always it's the curly brackets and then parenthesis, and then inside of that is the name and the GUID. Sometimes you'll also see the side. And now if I go down here and I say print u, it'll print out a bunch of stuff about this unit. And there you can go. You can see it's a type of ship. The subtype is 3106. The name, the side is blue. There's the GUID, the class. Proficiency is cadet. And the speed and whatnot there. Okay, this will also work if I didn't have the GUID. Since there is no other unit with that name, this should also work. Which it did, even though you didn't see it do anything. Let's see. There. So a lot of times I don't bother with the GUID if you know what it is. So I frequently rename the unit. just to get rid of that. It's just a little bit easier to rename, to use the rename, whatever, a simpler value. I'll say CG52. I wouldn't do that on that unit because it's better off known as a Bunker Hill. But if it's some other smaller unit, it makes it easier if you know you're gonna do stuff in Lua. And then this should also work. There you go. So now if you just want to find something to do a comparison on something, all of these things in here, you could just do a little bit of dot syntax on this u, the variable that includes. So this, I think they call what I set up right here, local u is equal to this unit. It's the unit wrapper. So you can reference any one of these by just saying dot side, and it'll go get just the value. The side is just blue. So if you wanted to compare if this unit is on side blue and then do something, it's as easy as doing something like that. So you could say if u dot proficiency is equal, two equals because we're doing comparison, to cadet, and then it's a string, so it's enclosed in quotes, then print and then we'll do else. We'll just say n. You don't have to have an else. And then we run this. It should. It's going to print the side here because I have that set up first. And then the proficiency is set to cadet, so it should say they are learning underneath that. Yep. Now, if I want to change the proficiency, sometimes you can get away with just using the same dot syntax and saying it's equal to something. I'll try that, but I don't think it's going to work because there's a different function for that. So I'm just going to put it here. U.proficiency is equal to veteran. And then down here, I better print it out to see what it is. Pretty sure it's going to give it an error. Yep. Senedit a get unit cannot set this property on a normal active unit. Please use Senedit. Please use an active unit SE entity instead via Senedit get unit set unit. So there is another function called set unit. So we'll do that. And how are we going to do that? Let's see. We're going to keep up this. We're going to keep this local u equals the unit. So we're going to keep the wrapper. And then we're going to say Senedit set unit. This is going to want the name, I think. And then I'm just going to say comma. And that's a string. That part didn't work. That was where the error came from. I kind of think this part's not going to work because I need to reset the value of u. And also another thing here is that since we already have the unit, I don't have to know the name here. I'll just do u.name. Because the dot syntax will print out any one of these things. And the name, CG52, I can have that stuffed into this function. It doesn't need the quote marks because it's now a variable. And you only need the quote, single quote, or double quote if it's a string. Not 100% sure if this is going to work, but we'll see. And it printed out veteran down here, so I think it worked. I wonder if that worked. Change this back to regular. Look at that. I think it's working. So now if I go back here, and we'll just say, go get that unit, and I want you to print the wrapper. Proficiency should be regular, and there it is. So that was pretty easy. All we did, and from the in the console here, if you press Control Z, it will go back. So all we did was we went and got the unit, and then we called another function setEdit set unit, and all we did was pass in the name, and we used u.name from the wrapper that we already got as u, and then we passed in the proficiency that we wanted it to be regular. I believe we could have done other things, although you can't do side. I know there's a separate one for side, and as well as name. I think you do name and then new name. All of these things you can find on the command Lua documentation site. If we type in new name, I think, yeah, it's got 8 different things. Unit. So since this is inside of the U, I think you can change it. Yeah, there's an example of what it wants you to do. Set unit, side, United States, unit name, new name. It's interesting that it's inside of the unit wrapper, though. I wonder if you can just change it by doing u.newName. Let's see. We're going to say u.newName equals kind of doubt that's going to work. New name does not exist. Yep. Didn't think that would work because the example they had was inside of set unit, but it's inside of the unit wrapper. I don't think you can do it without it. Oh, look at that. You can. So there I've just changed the name just by passing in the u.name value. If I copy it to the clipboard again just to make sure. Yep. So there's a lot of things like that where one thing works and another thing doesn't. Sometimes there's more than one way to do the same thing. Things like this probably aren't quite supported, so I try to do things the way they're saying to do them down here, which there was an example here where they want you to use the set unit. Okay, so that was a pretty simple example. Say on this ship you wanted to change the fuel. If you look at it over here, it's got a full amount of fuel. If you want to change it to a certain amount of fuel, we can do that pretty easily. You go back over here. This is a website I made that I keep little snippets of. If I go over here and press find and do fuel, change current fuel on a unit to a random value between 60 and 80. Let's see. Local fuel. Yeah, this one's a little complicated, but it works pretty good. I'm going to copy the whole thing. And I think I'll keep that top part. And I'm going to change this to A because that's what the example is using. I don't want to have to change all the times that I used A in this part. Local A, setEdit get unit name. That's going to replace this whole part. And then it's going to say local fuel is equal to A.fuel, which this print statement would be exactly the same as if we just printed A.fuel. Print A.fuel. And it should be somewhat of a complex. It's not just going to be like the number 3. Uh-oh, can't find. It's because I named it the USS Wicker. Whoops, who would do that? So here is the fuel, and it's a table where there's different types of fuel, because it has fuel for the ship and then it also has fuel for the aircraft. Not sure what the 3003 part is. I think that's the type of fuel. And it's saying current is 198, the max is 200. And the name is gas fuel. And then 2001, current 72, max 72, so it's full up on this one, and that's aviation fuel. So the 2001 is the type of fuel. 2001 is aviation. 3003 is the gas fuel, which is for the actual ship. So if we go back over here and put in the rest of what I had, it's saying make fuel equal to a.fuel, and then it's printing fuel again, which is the same thing as what I got here. Get rid of that. And it's saying fuel 2001, which is aviation fuel. Because this is for a plane. So you really want this to be 3003. Current equals fuel 3003 times the max. So this is the current fuel of 3003, which is our gas fuel, is equal to the max fuel times a random number between 600 and 800 divided by 1,000. It's basically going to put it at 60 to 80%. That you don't need to do that. You could just say it's equal to a number. So we'll just say 50,000. A.fuel equals fuel. Print fuel after the change. Let's see what this does. No error. That's good. And now current 3003 is 50,000. If we go back and look at the ship, it should be almost empty. Yep. And if you want to change that to be something not empty, not sure, is that 2 million? We'll do 500,000. Yeah, so now it's like a quarter full. Okay, let's see, what's the next thing? Okay, so up here I have a patrol area up here with some mech units in it. If we go over here and look at the mission editor, I have a patrol called Base Patrol, and it's currently active. Let's say you want to change the patrol to be inactive every 15 minutes or something. You want to flip it from active to inactive, or if it's inactive, you want it to be active. I find this just to be a sort of interesting little bit of code. You could have your SAMs in this little patrol zone. It doesn't. They could be on a rather than in a zone like this. It could be on a support patrol where they'd just be going along a straight line. You could have them turn on and off this way. I played around with this a little bit. Sort of works. You could have the patrol. You could have the mission turn on and off the radar. So it's just a mission reverser. Let's see. Mission status reverser. So paste this in here, local A, set it at get mission. And then the side, we're going to say blue. And the name of the patrol was called Base Patrol. And I'm going to get rid of this and just say print me out whatever the wrapper is of that mission. And here you have mission. It's got the GUID, the name, Base Patrol, side blue, type patrol, subtype. It's a surface ground patrol. Is active true. So that's sort of what you want to play around with, is active. Let's just print out is active. Yes. So this is sort of interesting. Down here I have it as true and false. I think true and false and yes and no are interchangeable, but sometimes in different programming languages that is not the case. You need to be really careful. So we're going to say if a.isActive is equal to, it said yes, then a.isActive equal to no. And these probably should just do this as a simpler test. It's sort of a Boolean. Booleans are true or false, yes or no. They don't normally get enclosed inside of quotes. I wonder if I should just do this as a test. And we'll just say a.isActive is equal to yes. That should be 1 equals. It's not doing a comparison just yet. Okay. So that works. Go back to where we were. If a.isActive is equal to yes, then a.isActive is equal to no. Else a.isActive is equal to yes. And see if we did that right. Still different that over here I've got false. If a.isActive set it to true, else it looks the same. A.isActive, yes. I don't think it matters. All I'm doing is reversing it. So up here I did if it's equal to false. Here I've got it if it's equal to yes. As long as you have the no and yes like this, it should work. And then up here, we're going to move this down to the bottom and see if it works. Aha, had this problem last time. Aha, because it's not capitalized. Oh my god. Alright, so that didn't work because it doesn't like capitals. Oh my god. And you can tell that by the color of the font. And so this code is correct. If I run it, no, yes, no, yes, no. If I go back over here and look at this, it should be inactive. There it is, inactive. A lot of times you have to close something or move time forward to see something actually change. I've seen that on the MCON changes. If you want to change the radar on and you don't have the game advancing, it doesn't actually happen until the game advances a couple of seconds. Sometimes more than 1 second. It's thrown me off a little bit. Okay, I'm going to try and wrap this up. I feel like this isn't really going that well. There's a lot of this is going to be deleted out. So one thing I wanted to go over is scoring. If you do scoring, normally you would go in and create an event, create a new event, and you would have you almost end up with an event for every type of unit that you want to have a different score. And then every one of those events has its own trigger and its own action. And you drill down on the trigger to say, I want the blue side, I want an aircraft, I want it to be an F-15. And then you can control the scoring with just that. I find that to be pretty unmanageable. So I'm going to create one here. I'm creating an event, a blue unit destroyed. I'm going to add a trigger, create new trigger. Unit is destroyed, create. I'm just going to call this blue unit destroyed. And target side is going to be blue, and that's all I'm going to set. I'm going to be done with the triggers for that. Now I've got a trigger here. I'll add that trigger. Under actions, I'm going to add an action. I don't have any to go edit it. Here's an action. I'm going to create a new action that's going to be Lua script, create new action. I'm going to call it blue unit destroyed. And down in here, I'm just going to, I already have this code written out. I'm going to copy and paste some of it in here. And this is Lua scoring example. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom where I have some examples. Scoring action for killing red units. I'm going to do this one. So it's all of this here, and I'll go over some of that. Let's see, back to the game. Event action. This is the Lua console for this. And let's go over what this says. Uh-oh, that didn't work. I can't make this window larger, can I? Drives me a little bit crazy. I always want to make this area where the actual Lua script is larger, and I can't. It just adds up this gray area at the top that's completely not useful. So let's go over what this is saying here. At the top local side, this is the side you want to control scoring for. So if you had NATO or Russia or something like that, you would change the name here. I'm on the blue side, and that's the playable side in this scenario. So I'm going to say the side is blue. Local current score is going to go out and get the current score from the senedit get score function, and then it's just passing in the side that we just set up here, which is blue. So it's basically putting blue right there. Local points. Points we're going to start out as 0, just as sort of a coverall. So in case there's something in there that you don't really want to have any points, we're going to explicitly say the points to add to the score are 0 at the beginning. And now we're going to go ahead and set the unit wrapper of the senedit unit X. This is the unit that's triggering this action. So on this event, the blue unit destroyed trigger, whatever unit that is called unit X. So I'm going to set local unit. I'm going to put it all into this variable called unit, whatever that triggering unit that was destroyed is. Next thing we're going to do is see if that unit type is set to weapon. Because I have any blue unit destroyed, it could be a ship, aircraft, could be a satellite, or a weapon. If it's a weapon, I want it to stop running the code because there's no scoring based on what the weapon is. So this return right here, if unit type, and that's the dot syntax there for the type that's inside of the unit wrapper, is equal to weapon, then return, which exits out of this Lua action code. And that's just going to stop, so there'll be no scoring. And now we're going to go back up here, and this is just going to do a quick check to see what the unit type is. Remember when we did the unit in the wrapper, there was a bunch of different things, such as name, proficiency, and whatnot. One of those was type, and the 4 main types are aircraft, facility, submarine, and ship, I think. Which means we probably should add ship type into this one. I'm going to skip that though, and we'll just say that aircraft and facilities are the only things that have scoring in this little test scenario anyways, and that'll work. So unit type, if it's equal to, remember 2 equal signs is for comparison. We're not setting unit type equal to aircraft. We're checking to see if it is equal to aircraft. If it is, then we're going to say points, which we set up there, is equal to 0. We're going to override that and say points is equal to minus 200. Else if, so if that's not correct, we're going to also check if the unit type is equal to facility, then points equals minus 50. And where I copied this from, there were some seal units, and that was the only facility type that was in there. We can get rid of that. Anything that you see that has these 2 dash marks in front of it means it's a comment, and it's not actual code. Just allows you to comment your code. So you can see up here, I have lots of them in here so that somebody else can understand what I'm doing. Actually, it's really so I can understand what I did when I go back and look at it. So I've got 2 different sets of points that I'm setting here. Minus 200 if it's an aircraft, minus 50 if it's a facility. Well, that's not very exciting. That's not very granular. What if I want to know if it's a particular aircraft? I want to set different points. So that's where we get to down here. First, I just needed to set some specifics just to sort of cover our butt for any type of aircraft. It also makes it so that if they're all worth the same amount, you don't have to go back through and specify them. You could just say everything's worth minus 200 except for that one F-35 is going to be worth, minus 1,000 or something. And that's what we're doing down here. The blue aircraft in the game that I copied this from were a B-1B, B-2A, F-35, F-22. Raptors in the 35s were the default 200. So down below here, where I have more if statements, the only thing I'm checking for is whether it's a B1, a B2, or a B52. And here in this comment, I'm saying this % sign is because a dash is a special character. So this comparison we're going to be doing is a string match. It gets a little more complicated than what we had up here, where we're just doing check to see if unit type is equal to facility, but is way more powerful. It's basically saying if inside the unit class name. And remember, this unit is the CMANO unit X, the unit that was destroyed that triggered this action. And inside of that, one of the things you got back inside the wrapper is class name, which is sort of the general class name. It's basically what any of these things are. E3G Sentry, that's the class name. If it contains B1B, but since this dash is a special character, you have to escape it with the % sign. So the Lua code interprets it literally. If you didn't have that % sign, this wouldn't work. So if the string match in the unit class name, if the unit class name contains the text B1B, then points is equal to -400. And then we're ending that. I'm not sure why these aren't else ifs, but I must add a reason for that. So then you get into another if statement. If the class name contains B52, then the points equals -250. And you can see all we're doing is overriding the points value that we set to 0 up at the very top. And there's only going to be one of these every time it's triggered because there's only one destroyed trigger, one unit destroyed that's triggering this action. So all three of these are basically the same, just changing the string match to suit whichever one of the class names that you want to control. So I'm saying a B2A is going to be -1,000 points, a B52 is going to be -250. And down at the bottom, all you're going to do is go get the current score. So up here, local current score, get the current score before any of this for the side blue. So right now, there's been no losses. The current score should currently be 0. And now set the current score equal to current score plus points, which is what we've been setting in all of these things. And then I have a print statement to put something into the Lua history because I like to use that. And this is pretty confusing to read because there are all kinds of sets of quotes and then the dot syntax, the dot syntax between the string. This part's a string because I wanted to enclose the unit side, which would be blue or red, inside of the brackets. I'll show you that in a second. And then this is where it's actually setting the score. Set score. Set score takes 2 or 3 values. The first 2 are mandatory, the side, and then the score that you want it to be. Keep in mind this isn't adding something. You're explicitly setting the current score to a certain number. And the current score is right here. It's the current score from before we did anything and then adding on the points that we decided on based on a bunch of if statements here. And then the third thing that you can put into the set score is a description of why you're changing the score. So here I have unit name, again from the unit class that we have up at the top. And then again, a whole bunch of this double quotes. I wanted this to be inside a parenthesis, and then you got your double dot syntax. It's kind of ridiculously complicated, but if you look through it, I think this is actually a pretty good example of a not too complicated Lua bit of code, but it actually does quite a bit. Okay. Did I give this a name? I did. Okay. Phew. Man, this is a long video. I'm going to get rid of that and back up here to the event. I already put in the trigger. Now I need that. Add action. So now I have a scoring event. This is just for blue unit destroyed. If this was a real game, I'd probably go and make another one for red unit destroyed so that when I destroy a unit on the other side, I also get score. As it is now, these are all going to be negative numbers for me losing a unit. It is repeatable, it's active, and it's shown in the log. Got the log down here. So let's see. Let's see if I add a unit. It's going to be an aircraft. We'll do F15. This should just be the base score. Let's see, and we'll put it on a path right into this. I believe that thing's got its radars on. What else do we want to do? I think that's it for now. We'll move it forward rapidly. Should get shot down. Boy, hard to shoot down. Wonder why that is. Particularly good. I like it. Wonder if I can get him to stay at a higher altitude. I just want him to get shot down. Man. Nothing's ever simple. Can't tell me it lost all its... Oh, it's reloading. Oh my god. Alright, well that didn't work too good. Let's put in some... We'll put in some Su-57s because they seem to take care of everything. There we go. We need to switch back. Uh-oh. Okay, stop. What did we lose? I think we lost a couple of things there. If we go back here and look at scoring. And then the scoring log. This was part of... This is the reason inside the set score part. This is optional. It could have just said change the score from 0 to minus 200. The reason is the third optional part that I was passing in. And you can see I was passing in the name and the subtype for some reason. I'm not sure why I was doing that. I think I was trying to make sure the subtypes weren't overlapping. And then I'm also, this part here is part of the code that we added in there. And let's see, so did we lose anything? So all of those are minus 200. What we need to lose is a B52, and that'll be a different score. So we're going to insert a B52. Poor guy. Hate to do this to you. And there we lost the B52. If we go back and look at the scoring now, whoops. And now you can see the difference in points. So these were all minus 200 because that was just the basic any type of aircraft. And then I was specifically saying if it's a B-52, a B-1, or a B-2, then the score is going to be different. And there is the different one for a B-52. Okay, one last thing I wanted to show you is that I normally have two monitors open. I don't like the log in this window. I have it in its own log on a different monitor. Another thing that I like in addition to that is my own log viewer for viewing stuff that's in the Lua History Log. Let's see, let's close both of these. So this is a program called Snaketail. It works much the same as this log does. You just tell it a file to monitor. And let's see, open file. There is a separate log. This is the log that's being shown down here. There's a Lua History Log that if there's any print statements, they end up in there. If there's errors, they end up in there. So if you're developing a scenario and you're using a bit of Lua code, you might want to check this all the time to see if there's any errors because they'll print in there. Same as in the console that they print in the console. Basically, you see the same thing in Lua History Log. This is changed every day based on the date. Today is the 20th. So if I open this up, now you can see stuff here. And this is the print statement that I had from over here. This bit right here where it says print, that's printing it out to the Lua History Log and saying unit side, unit name, and then the amount of points that I lost for that. So I have this log open when I'm playing my own scenarios so that it shows me more information. If you have a large strike going on and you're attacking an airport or something and there's a whole bunch of units you attacked, they scroll so fast in the main log that you can't tell what you hit. In the Lua History Log, it'll show me every single unit, plus I can scroll through it. Where did it go? Snaketail. I can scroll up as far as I want. You can see how much stuff is in here, whereas in this log, you can only see a little bit of stuff. And it does work with color coding. I had that set at one point. Options. Keyword highlight. Yeah. Unit destroyed. Yeah, I needed to change the text a little bit, and then it would highlight it as, let's see, red. Edit. Unit destroyed. If it just says blue in brackets, it should turn the whole line red. There. And so you can do that for whatever you want, and that's sort of why I was using the brackets. I could put stuff in there that I can control, and then I could control what this log looked like. So if it said blue unit destroyed inside brackets, I'd know that was my unit, and I'd have it be red. If it said red unit destroyed inside brackets, I'd have it say green. I'd have it show as green background. And you can end up having it look fairly similar to the way the main log looks. I also put weather updates and different stuff in here. It makes it easier to see. Phew! That seemed rather long and didn't go that well on my end. Hopefully there's something in here that's useful to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye. Wait. One last thing for this never-ending video. There's some very cool stuff. I showed you the Lua Wrapper that's part of it. It's much more complicated. Let's see. If we go back here, there's a lot you can do with the wrapper. Let's see, what do we need to do to this? I think we'll start out with a different unit. I'm going to say a ship. I think the San Antonio is a, yeah, LPD. Okay, so now I got an LPD. I'm going to put in some stuff on it. Edit docked boats. What is this going to be? LCAC. No beach out of reach. Do that one. We'll say there's 4. I think you can fit 4 in there. No, maybe not. 3. Okay, I'm going to add some cargo to this. Unit actions. I didn't turn on cargo, did I? Edit cargo. If I put some cargo on here, what's something that would fit on the LCAC? Pretty much anything, right? We'll say we want 25 of those. Okay, we'll go back over here. Boats. Load cargo. Oh, how come it's not there? And it's not there. Why is that? Did I not actually add it? Edit. Cargo. Oh, man. Pressed the wrong button, didn't I? Add. I closed it. Now it's got cargo. If you go to one of the boats. Load all. Okay. Now if I go get this, let's put, it holds helicopters too. Let's put a edit aircraft. Osprey. Let's put a couple Osprey on here. And that's enough. And we'll go get the copy unit ID to the clipboard. We're going to go back up here and say local U equals, and whenever you, we still have to do this, send, edit, get, unit, and then we're going to paste that in there. You always got to do the parenthesis because the unit ID just has the curly brackets, needs to be inside parenthesis. And then if we go print U, we'll see that much the same thing as we did before. It's the same handful of stuff. Subtype, name, side, blah, blah, blah. Where are the docked ships and the Osprey? They're not on there, but they are in there. There's another thing you can do. U.fields, I think. And now you got more stuff. Still got the same stuff there at the top. But now you got all of this stuff. And then there's an even better way to get everything that's inside of here. So there ends up being a ton of stuff that you can get. And Michael M75AU as a good example of it here. It's sort of an overwhelming amount of stuff. So he's using A. All right. So we've already done this print a.fields, and then he does this for loop. This is over my head. I'm not 100% sure what's going on here. I sometimes can edit stuff like this, but I can't write it. So he's using A instead of U. Change that. So a.fields, this is a.fields here. Blah, blah, blah. And now when I run this, oh my God, look at all that stuff you got. And again, it's hard to see all that in there. If you go look at the Lua history, where'd my snake tail go? Let's see if we can make some sense out of this. Okay, so here's the beginning of it. For K and V inside pairs A fields do. Somewhere in here you should be able to see that there's an Osprey. This is the beginning part. There's proficiency, regular. It's not in a group, nil. Weather for that unit. Kind of interesting that they're keeping track of the weather where the unit is. That unit as contacts. So this is telling you that the other side sees this ship as a contact named Skunk 7. Mounts. Tells you whether it's on a mission or not. Hosted units. Aircraft. 1, 2, 3, 4. What's going on there? And then 2 and 1. That's a little interesting. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's just giving you the GUID. 2, 1, 5, 5, 4. Not 100% sure what that's telling you. I wonder if that's telling you... I don't think I loaded anything on the Osprey, but those are the Osprey. Not sure what's going on with the numbers there. Those are the Osprey, and then here is the boats. So if you wanted to do something in Lua with a docked boat on the LPD, here are the GUIDs for those. And then somehow... I believe if you got the GUID for one of those boats that had cargo on it, you could do the same type of thing as we did on this unit, only on that unit, and it would show you the units that are on that. So all that stuff you can get to one way or another if you're patient enough to figure out how all this stuff works. What else is in here? There's a lot of information in here. And certainly any of this stuff you can get to using some sort of dot syntax to pull it up to do a comparison. Some of it you can also change. I've done some stuff with the condition underway. That could be like docking underway. There's a bunch of different conditions. I wish they would tell you what they all are. There ends up being a few too many of them to, like one of them's cranking or something like that. It's hard to do much with them because there's so many of them. And that's the end of it. Somewhere in here you could also change damage to units. There are separate functions to do that. Now I think I'm done.